5th Hour Radio Show.
Tom, you've been in the radio business quite a while now. Was wanting to be a talk show host something you always wanted to do from the very beginning? I know you started off, I think I read where you were 14 years old.
I won a contest when I was 14 to be a disc jockey. The radio station near where I lived was giving away an hour of time to anyone who wrote a good letter, and I wrote a letter saying that, of course, the radio station had no idea what music to play and that I could straighten them out. So for weeks, I prepared for my appearance when I was responded to, and I had a whole yellow plastic bag from the local Sam Goody record store of all the good songs that they're not playing on the radio. So when I got to the radio station to collect my hour of airtime, the program director was waiting for me, and he took a stack of cartridges and a stack of liner cards, which is what we call cue cards in the radio business, and he said, "This is what you're going to play, and this is what you're going to say."
Oh, so you got duped.
And it was my first lesson in the radio business.
You got duped then.
Well, put it this way. I was not that I was duped so much as that's the way the business really works. I imagined that the reason they weren't playing the good stuff was because nobody had hipped them up to it. And the reality was they didn't really care what the hip stuff was. They would play the music that fit their corporate profile, and that's all they were going to play.
So they just wanted the mainstream stuff up.
Correct.
Now, do you think this was something you were destined to do? For one, you're just so good at it. I mean, is it a natural ability, having this gift of gab, or did you ever have to go any kind of classroom training, to get taught how to be you, I guess?
Well, there's a little bit of all of that in there. When I got into the radio business, originally as a disc jockey, I realized that I needed to develop an act because it is a show, after all. And so I, among other things, I had a federal government subsidized elocution class I took to lose my accent, which was a New York area, New York City accent.
You had that heavy accent.
I lost my accent by design. And on top of that, then after I did that, I also, had to go to work in small radio markets like Stanton, Virginia, which is where I worked in 1981, to learn, essentially how to, talk to callers and the mechanics of doing this. I didn't grow up knowing that. I had to go learn it.
And you talk about losing your accent. Do you ever bring it back, or is that something you turn off and on, or?
Well, I always turn it on for doing imitations of people who talk like that. But no, fact is, I grew up in a super poor, lower middle class family, and if I want to do this kind of a show, I have to sound educated, and I don't think that sounds educated, so I have to do something about it.
Well, doing some time traveling, looking back at Tom Leykis now, how different is your style? Do you think it's changed over the years?
My style has changed more than my personality. I'm a real person. I never say things I don't believe, and the things I believe today are most of the things I believed back then. But I learned the technique. I learned the style of doing it. That's what I learned over time.
Well, tell me about this defining moment in your career that I read about, the story of your girlfriend locking you out of your house, really turning your career around.
Well, there was the one who literally threw all my things in the hallway, changed the locks in New York, and then called me at work about 12 noon and said to me, you better come here and get your out. And you better come get it before somebody takes it from you.
Now, why did she do that? Was it because I read it was because of money? Like she said you wasn't making enough money or something like that.
Right. Well, when she met me, I had a radio job. I was a partner of a guy, and we did a show together. And then we had a falling out. And when we had the falling out, suddenly she decided that she didn't want to be around me anymore. And so she locked me out of the house. Then she told me, call me when you get a real job. Oh. And amazingly enough, 8 years later, when I was working at my biggest gig ever in L.A. at a radio station called KFI, she saw me on the TV show 2020, and she called me at KFI because she saw me on 2020 with the mic flag of KFI. So she looked KFI up in the phone book and called my office, and she got me on the phone, and she said to me, hey, how you doing? You ever get to New York?
Hey, how you doing now? Yeah. And what did you say to her?
Hey, how you doing? And I told her that even if I got to New York, I would not see her. And she was not very happy with that response.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question. I was going to ask you, once you did become successful, did you ever rub her nose in it, or were you the gentleman?
I didn't have to do anything. It was pretty clear where this was going.
That was nice of her to start thinking about you.
Correct.
To make a long story short, what brought you to KMPC and KLSX, which that's where you first started doing the Tom Leykis Show, right?
Correct. Well, actually, I did the show on KFI beginning in 1988.
Okay.
And, I bounced around L.A. I was on, KMPC in 1994. Then I went on KLSX in 1997. And I was on KLSX for 12 years until 2009.
Now, you were obviously with KLSX longer. Did the show ever evolve then, any at all, going through any changes like from when you first started till the end as far as topics, call-ins or anything like that? Or was it pretty standard all the way through?
Well, the only reason my show changed back in 1997 is because I found myself doing the afternoon show on a station that had Howard Stern in the morning. So I had my show had to become a show that would appeal to Howard Stern fans without being a copy of Howard. And so what we did, Howard's not a call-in show by nature. He takes occasional phone calls, but he's not a call-in show. So we took what we knew about doing a call-in show, and we decided to apply content that would appeal to the males who listen to Howard Stern, but would not be a copy of Howard. Howard is very concerned about people stealing his material, stealing his concept, and we did not want to be a rip-off of Howard in any way, shape, or form.
Now, are you still good friends with Howard?
Howard and I have only met one time.
Oh, okay.
And it was later than you think. It was probably about 6 years ago I met Howard. He was wonderful. Howard and I have the same agent, a gentleman named Don Buckwall. But I only met Howard one time.
Okay.
And I found him to be charming and fantastic. And, I've always been a fan of his, but I thought he was wonderful. But Howard and I, we live 3,000 miles apart. So we're just not in a position to be close friends because I just don't go to New York very often. He doesn't come to L.A. very often. That's the way it is. And frankly, when I met him, it was the first time, even though we've been on the same radio station in L.A. for 8 years or something like that. The time I met him, 9 years. It was the one and only time I met him. I loved the experience, but I would not characterize us as close friends simply because he's far away and we don't run in the same circles.
Yeah, see, I was under the assumption that maybe you ran into him a lot since you did work at the same radio station.
Yeah, but we didn't because he was heard on the same radio station, but in reality, he lives in New York.
Okay, all right.
And I lived in Los Angeles for 26 years.
Well, there you go. I'm sure there's a lot of people out there who thought the same way as I did and cleared that up.
You know what? Many people believe that when you do a radio show that you know all the other people on the radio station. In fact, even in L.A., many of the people who were on the same station did not work in the same studio. I did not work at the station. I worked at a separate location. First, at the Westwood One studio in Culver City. And secondly, I worked on a lot of Paramount Pictures in a separate studio from everybody else. So until the last 2 or 3 days of the show, I was not working at the studios at the radio station where everybody else was.
So right now, though, you've branched out, away from traditional terrestrial radio. You started the new normal network. Is that it?
New Normal Network, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Which is that's internet-based programming. Why make the move to internet as opposed to traditional radio where you're so accustomed to being heard?
I'm not concerned about the device that we use. Radio is an appliance. I produce audio content. It is device agnostic is what we say. The idea is I speak in the microphone. Can you hear it at the other end? That's all we care about. We really don't care about whether you have a radio, which is a 90-year-old appliance that people are getting tired of. What I care about is I speak. Can you hear me? That's it.
I read somewhere where you actually had a caller, and I don't know how long ago this was, but you had a caller call in, female caller, and confess to a murder.
Yeah, that was in 2007 when I was doing radio.
I mean,
In fact, I was doing a live performance in Portland, Oregon. And this woman called in and said that she had murdered the father of her child. But because she was a nurse, she was able to make it look like a suicide.
Oh.
This was a real person. But she called us 5 years after the event, and after 5 years in the state of Arizona, if it's a suicide, they destroy all the physical evidence of the suicide, and so it had been declared a suicide, but they were not able to pin it on her because the evidence was gone. So essentially, she knew exactly what she was doing, and the Phoenix Police Department did find her.
Well, you've obviously been doing this for years. Have you ever had anybody? I know it's a wide range of people that call in to the show. You ever had anybody call you and you just lose control?
I don't lose control because I've heard it all before. Everything people say, I've already heard it. I've heard every script. In fact, usually when I hear someone start saying something, I know how it's going to end.
Well, I'm sure people
it's
call
very hard
in.
to lose control when you know exactly what's going on.
Yeah, I'm sure people call in, just to try to get at you, just to see if they can make you lose control.
They do. They try. But I've been doing this a long time. I started doing talk radio over 32 years ago. I've been doing it a long time, so I know the script. When somebody calls in, I pretty much know how everything's going to play out. It's very rare that you can surprise me with something. People have, but it's hard to do.
I've got a lot of people that I've heard say the only difference between satellite radio or internet radio or internet-based talk shows is the fact that you can curse. And if that was the case, I wouldn't even do a talk show or even listen, because who wants to listen to that shit,
I've been asked this question many times since I just started doing the show on the internet. The reality is the internet is the home of rotten.com and other stuff. There's nothing you could do that's going to shock people. The reality is there are many things on traditional brick-and-mortar radio stations that you cannot get away with saying, not because they're vulgar, because they are unfriendly. For example, I was on my show on the radio back in 2007, and I was talking about 7-Up. 7-Up had a commercial that said they were all natural. So I got a can of 7-Up and I looked at it. The can said that it was lemon lime soda, it was all natural, and the ingredient said that it contained no lemon and no lime. So I said on the show, how can it be all natural if lemon lime soda has no lemon and no lime? Well, it turned out that even though 7-Up was not an advertiser, nor any of the other sodas made by the company that makes 7-Up, Sunkist, Dr. Pepper, RC, what have you, it turned out that 7-Up rode on the same truck with some brand of energy drink that advertised on the station. So I got a call from the general manager telling me, don't ever talk about 7-Up again. 7-Up! How controversial is that?
Did you ever get the
another
answer?
show I talked about the NFL. I was not thrilled about the NFL, not thrilled about concussions in the NFL. And I was told, don't talk about that anymore. And I said, LA doesn't even have an NFL team. Why is that an issue for you? And I was told that, well, we didn't have an NFL team now. But at some point in the future, we might get one. And our station might want to carry the play-by-play of the NFL. And if you're on the air talking about concussions, we might not get the rights to those games. So what I'm saying is a lot of things that are not vulgar, not sexual, not violations of FCC rules, that radio talk shows are not allowed to talk about because business issue as much as 10 years down the line. So we have lists of things we couldn't discuss. And now we can discuss all of it, any of it, anytime.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, you had people telling you what you couldn't do. What's it like being your own boss now? I'm sure you had them days like you're talking about when you fantasize about kicking your boss's ass when you had those bad days. Do you think about that
Well,
when you're?
keep in mind, many people thought it was like Howard Stern. Many people thought, I just want to get on the radio and say fuck. And that's not what it is. Saying fuck is no big deal. But saying that 7-Up it cannot possibly be all natural, that's the kind of thing I want to say off the top of my head. I don't want anybody second guessing what I'm saying. By the way, there was a story the other day about how many products being sold as natural or organic that really are not. And I was at the con 6 years ago. I was talking about that, and then I was told to shut up about it.
So what about your show right now? I mean, how's the show doing? Is it growing in listeners like you expected? Is it working out pretty much like you planned?
This year we will have almost 9.1 million tune-ins without a transmitter, without a satellite dish, without a big company behind us, without a big marketing firm behind us, which is pretty incredible when you consider. We had at one point, and probably still do, we had more listeners in a month than 7 Los Angeles radio stations. And that's without a transmitter, without a brick and mortar radio station.
Do you think Rush Limbaugh listens to your show?
Well, I've known Rush Limbaugh with time. I knew him in the 80s and the 90s. Rush he's a person who kind of big times you. Once he's outgrown you, he moves on. That's fine. But I know he's heard what I do, and I certainly was with him when he was launched in L.A. In fact, I was the person who helped launch him in Los Angeles. The deal with Rush, I really respect him as a broadcaster. I don't care about his politics. The guy has a history in broadcasting and being a disc jockey. He has all the basics of radio down, like most people don't have. He understands the entertainment value of radio.
You respect his broadcast.
The last 7, 8, 9 years is that he takes himself too seriously.
You respect his broadcasting ability. You just don't really dig his ideas.
If I were he, I would do it a different way. I would not let any political party tell me what to do. I would be independent. I would be my own man. It's my opinion that he either sets the table for the Republican Party or they set the table for him. But the point is, he now has become an instrument of the Republican Party instead of being just simply a broadcast.
Well, how about the people that haven't ever heard your show and they're listening to our show? Give them a rundown on what they can expect, if they do tune into your show.
We say outrageous things. We don't worry about what people are going to say. There's nothing politically correct about it. Politically incorrect jokes, politically incorrect commentary, politically incorrect politics. All of it. That's what you're going to get when you tune in. Nobody tells us what to do. Nobody tells me what I can say. And so I say what people are thinking, but wouldn't dare say in public.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what makes good programming. I guess about the only thing left is, where and when can people listen to you?
You can hear me on our website, blowmeuptom.com. I know that's strange, blowmeuptom.com. You can find us on TuneIn, the app for the smartphones, whether it's Android or iPhone. If you download the TuneIn app, or if you already have it, you can search The New Normal, which is the name of our company, The New Normal, and all our programming will pop up, and the Tom Leykis Show is on Monday through Friday, live at 3 p.m. Pacific Time, 6 p.m. Eastern.
Tom, man, I want to thank you for taking time out of your night to join us. It's been a pleasure talking to you. It's been a real honor.
I am so happy to do that, and I'm so thrilled with what you're doing, and I'm so thrilled with the fact that everybody who's listening right now, their ears are not on radio. Their ears are somewhere else. They have marched off to the beat of a different drummer, and that's our customer. So thrilled that you're doing what you're doing, and thrilled that some of your folks will tune into us.
Well, I'm sure they will. It's one of the best shows out there, if not the best. And I give that honor to you.
Thank you very much. I'm very flattered, and I really appreciate that.
Tom, you have a nice night.
You too. Thank you so much.
All right. Goodbye. The 25th Hour Radio Show.